These my dollars make it hurt.
Welcome back to the Deep Cover Podcast. I'm your host, Kerry Stevenson. Once again, like I always do, shout out to my co-hosts, Michael Crawford, Chris Aguilera. Sorry for the delay with this. So I was feeling a little under the weather. Wasn't going to be able to talk, for an entire hour. But I'm here back right in time. I know people are probably drafting today, tomorrow, closing out the draft season. So I'm here to get you right with the last tiers episode. This time we're doing tight ends. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody who's watched the show, supported, liked, retweeted, all that. I can't thank you enough for doing that. How much that means to me. Rocking with your boy with this. So we're gonna close it out right. We're gonna go through these tight end tiers and get you right before your drafts. So we're gonna jump right in with the tier one. Go ahead and name that. So tier one, and that's gonna be the elite tight end ones. So again, like I say, I don't throw out the word elite, very often. This is for the cream of the crop, guys that are going to give you that huge competitive advantage over your field. So there is not a lot of guys that really fall into this range. One kind of obvious one is obviously Travis Kelsey. Looking at him and looking at last year, teams kind of decided that they were gonna play a lot of two high safety looks versus the Chiefs. Try to force Mahomes into longer, kind of more methodical drives. The wrench in that plan for defenses is it really didn't matter what type of defender you put on Travis Kelsey in those settings. He was going to get open. You split him out, into the slot. You split him all the way out. He was going out there on the boundary, and it didn't matter. Big outside corner, big slot, small slot, nickel linebacker, third safety. Like anybody could get it with Kelsey. He was beating everybody. So, when you have a guy like that, um, it pretty much just throws a wrench in the team's plans. Obviously with guys like Tyreek Hill and McCole Hartman, all world speed. Um, teams are going to be forever on high alert for those guys, and they're probably going with the better odds. Playing those high looks and try to force Mahomes to kind of play more small ball and be more methodical. With his arm talent and some of the things that he can do and his just aggressive mindset. I can understand why teams would want to, try to force him to kind of rein it in a little bit more. But in doing that, it just opens up a wealth of volume and opportunity for Kelsey. So I see teams kind of going back to that approach because it did bear some success at times. I mean, success at times. Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl was able to do some of that, but we're talking about a great defensive coordinator, and uh, just a super super talented group. So um, holding them in check is allowing them to score um, 28 points instead of 42. So it's still one of the best offenses in the league, but Kelsey definitely benefits from that approach from defenses. I mean, he would kill you either way, but it just goes to another level if teams want to play them the way that they play them. So obviously Kelsey is in this tier. Another guy that's in this tier for me is Darren Waller. He had an insane amount of volume last year, and I think it'll be much of the same this year. Um, Nelson Aguilar left. He leaves behind 82 targets, which doesn't seem like a lot at first glance. But when you really look into it, he became like a key figure in that offense like late in the year. I think from like week 11 on, he averaged like 7.5 targets per game. And they brought in John Brown in the offseason. They ended up releasing him because they're kind of rolling with the young guys. Uh, and then they obviously have Henry Ruggs, but with Ruggs, Gruden might be more concerned with making sure he's getting his Fitbit steps in and actually getting him the ball. So, might be a lot of cardio there with Ruggs. So, I mean, that you just never know. Brian Edwards has the talent and the size to play that X position to me and absorb that Aguilar role. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But either way you slice it, I think Waller is going to be in for another really busy year. But then when you kind of look further into the situation, I see more upside. Gruden and Mayock in like bizarro fashion just decided that they were going to tear apart a good offensive line. So I think that's going to hurt their run game efficiency. I think they're still, going to be a solid running team, but I think when you kind of dismantle that group the way they did, even though they were able to add a good tackle in the draft, I still think that's going to have some some effect there. And then when you look at their schedule, per Sharp Football, they have the hardest schedule in the NFL this year. So I think those two factors is going to lead to them playing from behind a lot. And I think there's going to be a lot of throws, and Derek Carr's wheelhouse is that short and intermediate game. So it's going to be a lot of work for Darren Waller. So it might sound wild to say this, but from a player that had 145 targets last year, he could push for more than 145 this year. Just based off of those aspects I just pointed out. So uh, Waller is another guy that's in this tier. So I'm gonna cut the tier off here. Maybe surprising to some, but these guys are guys that their volume is just unmatched at the position. These are essentially wide receivers that you're getting at tight end. So to be able to plug those guys into your lineup and have that weekly advantage is huge, and you should be prioritizing those guys as such. So going in that order, Kelsey at one, and then Waller at two. So had to get creative with the tiers here to fit in this next guy. I'm not gonna bury the lead here. It's pretty clear who this guy should be. I'm gonna name this near elite tight end one, and it's gonna be a one person tier. I'm not gonna nickname this at all. George Kittle doesn't get the volume to be at the level of those first two guys, but from a talent all around aspect, he may be the best tight end of football. He's due some positive touchdown regression. He's efficient. He's a monster after the catch. He's all these things, and if you tell me that he scores 15 touchdowns this year, I wouldn't be shocked at all. Um, I don't think he, in any circumstance, will be able to get the volume to reach those top two guys, and volume matters. No, again, like I said, he could score 15 touchdowns, and I wouldn't be shocked at all. Um, but those other guys, I feel like are gonna score double digit touchdowns or very close to it. And with the amount of volume they get, they're still gonna be a step above where he is. And to be honest, there's concern from a volume standpoint with Kittle, with Ayuk there, and with Debo Samuel there, with those guys all together in an offense that wants to run the ball. That's going to be a bit of a challenge. So still like Kittle, I think he's a guy that you still would get a weekly advantage from playing. And again, like I said, he scored a bafflingly low amount of touchdowns just based on his talent level, his efficiency, and all those things. So, a blow up touchdown season could be on the horizon for him. So, I definitely draft this guy aggressively, just not quite in the range that you would Kelsey or Waller. So moving right along here, we're gonna go to tier three here. And tier three, I'm gonna name high end tight end ones. So, if you miss out on those top three guys, you probably need to be looking in this range heavily and trying to see if you can kind of make value reach what you're doing draft wise, and try to get one of these guys on your team. So gonna look at who we kind of have in this range. First, a guy like Mark Andrews. He's a guy I think could get an early season bump with Bateman out of the equation as that middle of the field target to kind of start the season. Andrews was a guy that many were kind of opining that he would push into that top tier range, that elite tier, going into last season based off 2019, uh, double digit touchdown season in 2019 with 10. Kind of fell off of that a bit. Kind of left some um, production on the field. He scored 7 TDs, but as Ravens fans will tell you, he probably should have scored 11, 12 touchdowns last year, just based off of some of the drops and some things that happened last year. But it was still a super productive player last year. Still the tight end four. Like Kittle, he'll never get into the volume stratosphere that Kelsey and Waller does. But he's another guy that if he led the position in touchdowns, I would not be surprised at all. So he has a ceiling there that is uncommon for the position, and puts him right up there with those guys from a ceiling standpoint. And again, if you can, because of the outlook of the tight end position as a whole, if you can get a guy with a ceiling like that, it puts you, a cut above of your competition. So it's a guy that definitely you should be prioritizing in that 4 5 turn kind of range, that 4 5th round. And you feel a lot better looking at your team when you're looking at the tight end position and you see some upside there that you know most of the rest of your league won't have. So definitely a guy to prioritize. Now, another guy that could get into that Kelsey Waller kind of target stratosphere is TJ Hawkinson. The Lions have the most vacated targets in the NFL coming into this season. But it was like 360, something crazy like that. So a lot of targets to be had. Hawkinson had, right at 100, little over 100 last year. But if you look at this year, let's look around for a second and kind of just see who's on this team is supposed to absorb this 360 targets. So you have Tyrell Williams, who missed last season, but 3 straight seasons before that, his target numbers never left the 60s. They got rid of Brashard Perriman, who was supposed to be that opposite um, outside receiver to Tyrell Williams. And now they're replacing him with the 5'9" kind of lid lifter and a Khalif Raymond, player I like a lot. But he's not quite at the level of a guy that is gonna be this target hog. He's more of a vertical field stretcher that you can take shots to that'll kind of, you know, keep the safeties honest, but not a guy I expect to, all of a sudden be 140 target kind of guy. And then when you look at the quarterback, neither of these guys, they're both, vertical guys. They don't project great as fits with Jared Goff. So then when you look at the rest of the unit, You have mid-round rookie Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's going to play in the slot in three wide receiver sets, but he's probably going to be off the field in two tight end sets. And it seems like they want to run their fair share of two tight end sets and kind of establish it. And when you look at him as a player, uh, very very solid player, but unspectacular looking kind of prospect. He's not a guy that's going to be out there really creating like a competitive advantage, I don't think. And he's not going to be a every down player. So um there's a lot of targets there, and not a lot of guys there that I project to be able to absorb a lot of it. So, Hawkinson is going to be out there looking like that meme of that Popeyes employee that was, sitting down outside the restaurant exhausted. That's what it's going to be for him, every week, and, I expect them to be a bad team. So I think they're going to be playing from behind a lot. So, um, Hawkinson, get ready because you're gonna be weary this year, but he's gonna be super productive. So a guy that you should definitely be prioritizing. Probably won't reach the touchdown ceiling of some of the other guys I've named, just because the offense just won't be um, good enough to kind of project that. But he's a guy that's gonna um, his volume is gonna be up there with just about anybody, or should be at least. So, like Hawkinson, another guy in this tier, Kyle Pitts. Uh, if you find yourself uncomfortable with his ADP, just stop using the word tight end with him. Rookie tight ends, they don't have a track record of production. Um, and I'm guilty of it myself early on in the process when Pitts was getting pushed up the board. I just thought that um, this is a guy that has to be um, a Kelsey year one for him to kind of cash in on the ADP as far as where he's going. But I think if you look at him as the unique player he is, and that he'll be used in unique ways, uh, he just kind of has an opportunity there, because I think it's going to be a blank slate to work with, volume wise after Calvin Ridley on that offense. You have Russell Gage, who is more of a slot receivers, and he's going to probably play some outside receiver and two wide receiver sets. Um, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Kyle Pitts plays some wide receiver, that plays that X receiver position into um, wide receiver sets. They have Hayden Hurst there at tight end, who will play an inline role, and then they have the name escapes me. They traded for an inline kind of blocking tight end. I'm sure it'll come to me in a second. But they traded, probably wasn't a lie. I mean, late round draft capital, but still they prioritize adding this tight end, this blocking tight end. And he's a guy that will probably get some snaps as well. Definitely in three tight end sets. We know last year the coordinator with the Titans, Arthur Smith, he's the coach of the Falcons, that he ran the most, or among the most three tight end sets in the league. So um, you know there could be some moving around, moving parts there. But Pitts is a guy that going to play some outside receiver, probably. Definitely going to be split out and play some of that, flex role at tight end as well. And he's not a guy I don't think is going to be left in the block very much. He's going to be out there running routes, and I think they're going to prioritize getting him the ball. So, like I said, if you're uncomfortable with the ADP, just stop using the word tight end. He's going to be moved around a lot. He's a special talent, and he, deserves to be in this range. So let's go ahead and plug these guys in. So I'm going to go with Kyle Pitts first on this list. I think the possibilities are kind of endless with this guy. Just looking at his opportunity, I'm gonna go with Mark Andrews next. Volume won't be a thing that he's going to get a great deal of. But as I've kind of opined about in the QB's tier with Lamar Jackson placing him where I placed him, this is one of the best offenses in the league. And Mark Andrews will be a focus of the passing game of the offense, even though it's not a voluminous passing game offense. Mark Andrews will be right at the head of that list, and so he's a guy that could score double-digit touchdowns. And in fact, I think it's probably more likely than not that he will score double-digit touchdowns. So definitely a guy to prioritize. And then again, T.J. Hawkinson with his volume is going to be unlike most anybody except for those top two guys. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he has more targets than anybody at this position, just based off of, you know, kind of what I laid out with what they're working with there. So we're gonna move on to tier four here, and that's gonna be the rest of the tight end ones. And so let's go ahead and name this now. These are the rest of the guys that I think that you can comfortably put in that tight end one range that you can, prioritize. So rest of tight end ones, and let's just kind of talk through some of the guys in this range. So one guy is Robert Tanyan. Man, when I tell you I had all the Sternberger everywhere last year, and I just knew that his breakout was coming. And so when the TDs start being scored, my first question was, "Who in the hell is Robert Tanyan?" But once you saw him play, it was pretty clear why he was the guy that was out there. Just super efficient guy, caught everything that came his way, and he just looked like one of those guys that was always where he was supposed to be on the field. And once you gain the trust of Aaron Rodgers and you're playing with a player of that caliber, um, and just the level that Aaron Rodgers played last year, if you're out there on the field with him, you have opportunity to produce, and he did. Didn't have a great deal of volume, but scored 11 touchdowns and did so in a uber efficient fashion. So this year I'm expecting much of the same. I don't know how much of a volume boost he's going to get. I know people have kind of talked that up a bit, but looking at this Packers skill position group, I think it's a little bit better than what we're giving credit for. And I mean, part of that is Aaron Rodgers and his ability to kind of prop people up. But they're getting the Randall Cobb coming in, and he's not the same Randall Cobb that left Green Bay. But still a good player. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers wanted him there, so he's gonna be looking at him to get him involved in the action. I thought Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdez Scantling both took strides last year. Also, I think Malik Taylor is a guy that looked great in preseason, and could be primed to maybe get some snaps. And then you have one of their draft picks, Amari Rogers, who could carve out a role as a scheme touch type player in that offense. So volume wise, might be a little bit more spread out. After obviously Devontae Adams, he's going to take a huge chunk of that from a volume perspective. But again, like I said, with Tanyan, if he's on the field with Aaron Rodgers and this, hyper efficient offense, double digit touchdowns are on the table for him once again. Another guy I put in this range is Logan Thomas. He's going to get a boost at the quarterback position with Ryan Fitzpatrick in the mix now. Now, I have questions about his high end target ceiling. They added Curtis Samuel to the mix, and to a lesser extent, added Adam Humphries and Diami Brown. And so I think those guys are going to help tremendously. Part of Logan Thomas's volume last year with Washington was they just didn't have anybody else to throw to that could really make plays outside of him and Terry McLaurin. So I do think, but I do think what he potentially loses in volume, he'll kind of offset with enhanced looks down the field and more red zone opportunities. And I expect this to be a better offense, a more productive offense that should be in range to score more points. And then just having a more aggressive guy back there in Ryan Fitzpatrick to kind of push some things down the seam and kind of really tap in on Logan Thomas's physical advantages with height, weight, speed that he brings to the table. So I do think he's a guy that if you're able to get him, you'll feel good about leaving the draft with him at tight end. Another guy in this range I'm feeling really good about um, is Noah Fant, and he's just a guy athletically that I want to bet on. If we're talking breakout players at this position, I would put him. Well, actually, any position, honestly, I would put him right at the top of the list of guys that could really truly break out in fantasy this season. Um, he's been productive over the last couple of years with substandard QB play, and honestly, if touchdowns would have broke his way a little bit more, we'd be having more of a conversation about him and higher kind of range as far as tight ends go. He scored 4 TDs last year, but if he scored um, maybe 3 more touchdowns, he would have been like a tight end 4. Um, but he's kind of being drafted as if you know he's not in the range that he actually is in. So he's a guy that I like making a bet on, making a stand on. Having Teddy Bridgewater at tight end kind of stabilizes that position. Should be kind of less missed reads there, less off target throws there at the position, which is going to help him. Also, beat writers are saying that he's being used in different spots in the offense this year, adding a little bit more creativity there instead of just having him in line. But we're not ungrateful about that, though. We're not gonna block any blessings around here. If he's being used in line, that means he's trusted to be on the field to pass block and to be out there as a heavy snap guy. So we want him in line. We want that kind of trust. But we also want him to be split out at times and be able to be used to create different mismatches. So watch out for Noah Fan. Definitely a guy that if you don't get one of those top guys, you should be looking at him from an upside standpoint. He's definitely one of those kind of swing for the fence guys, in my opinion. And then another guy that's in this range, and this is my guy right here. We're gonna, I'm gonna put my stamp on him, and that's Hunter Henry. Nobody is talking about him at all. And much like Noah Fant, when you look at his production last year, if he scored a few more TDs, if he scored, I think I got it wrong. I think Noah Fant scored 3 touchdowns, and I think Henry scored 4 touchdowns last year. If Henry scored 7 touchdowns last year instead of 4, he'd be in that tight end 4 range, and we may be looking at him in a different light. But when you look at his profile, man, it's a lot there. Like he's 26 years old. He was second on his team in targets last year. He was seventh among all tight ends in targets last year. He signed this huge free agent deal on a team that has a history of prioritizing the tight end position. And um, I mean, looking at what New England added, they added talent to that team, no doubt. But would anybody be surprised if Hunter Henry led his team in targets this year? I mean, I know I wouldn't. Personally, just looking at what they added, and I know they're going to be a run heavy team. But with the upgrade and offensive environment that they have there, um, it's night and day compared to last year. I mean, they just didn't have anybody to throw to. Cam Newton was banged up. It was a rough go for that offense last year. So, I think it's going to be huge to have stability in their weapons, even if their weapons are, not spectacular. Uh, Nelson Aguilar, Jacoby Myers, is a really really solid player. Kendrick Bourne as a slot receiver. These are not household names. These are not guys that are table setters, but they are a far cry away from the talent that they were pushing out there last year. So definitely a much better offensive environment. And then with Cam Newton being released, this adds another layer of red zone upside there. With all the red zone and goal line opportunities that Cam Newton got this year, Matt Jones is just not that a player of that ilk. That he's not going to be keeping it and trying to run it in, from the 5 yard line. That's going to be Damian Harris in the backfield. Shout out to him. Prioritize him in drafts, and then you know, it's going to be that seam guy, that big body weapon in Hunter Henry that they're going to be looking to down in that red zone area. Like they've looked for Gronk in the past. So Hunter Henry, man, I'm put like I said, I'm putting my stamp on him. I'm banging the table for him. So if I'm right about this, give me my props, come back to me. If I'm wrong, mind your business. So we're gonna move right along. Gonna go with another guy in this range as Tyler Hippy. Hippy is a player that's near and dear to me because of that rampage he went on in 2019. At the end of the 2019 season, he helped me win a dynasty league. So I'm gonna try to speak objectively about him, but it's not gonna be easy. He helped me get a chip, so shout out to him. But just looking at the situation, man, quarterback upgrade is massive. I felt a little bit better about his upside before that Sony Michelle trade, just based off of how the Rams have preferred to run it down near the goal line. And I think Sony Michelle is probably going to be a guy that they're going to look at with trust to be that guy. Like I think I talked about it in the RB tiers episode, or maybe the last episode of the pod, um, about how last year the Rams had Cam Akers as a guy that eventually became that guy that they trusted down in the goal line. And then before that, Malcolm Brown was a guy before they let Cam Akers, be free, so to speak. Uh, Malcolm Brown was a guy that they trusted. Um, I don't know if they trust Darrell Henderson down there. I'm not saying they don't, but clearly, giving up the draft capital that they did to get Sonny Michelle, I think you can kind of infer from that they wanted a guy that they can trust. So I think Sonny Michelle could kind of pick up that role and be that hammer down there. But honestly, this could be a lot of overthinking. All these splits and all these tendencies that we're talking about here is based off of a Jared Goff led offense. And so, you get a Stafford in there, just a much better player and a much more experienced player. Um, we don't know what'll happen. Um, I would think a guy like Sean McVay may loosen the reins and put more on Stafford's plate and give him more trust and more autonomy to do some of these things. So he may have a lot more say in this situation. So I think the thing I like about these top end players on this offense is there's that added layer of unknown upside, that variance, that possibility that you know we could see them kind of tap into what Green Bay does, down in close And maybe Stafford is a guy that's throwing 40 touchdowns and taking shots downfield and doing some of these things, especially with Cam Akers being out for the season. So definitely something to keep in mind there with Hippy, and a guy that you should feel comfortable drafting. So let's go ahead and put these guys in order here. I'm gonna go Tyler Higbee first. For some of those things I named, that unknown upside. I love that offensive environment there. I'm gonna go Noah Fant next. He's a guy that I think is kind of being underlooked, and I'm placing him probably a little bit higher than consensus. Next, I'm gonna go Logan Thomas. Again, questions about the overall target ceiling, but the offensive environment, should be better, should be a lot better. So, I like his ability to, maybe be a little bit more efficient, and maybe score some more touchdowns, and make up for what I don't think will be as a voluminous situation as it was last year. And then Robert Tanyan, I'm put here again, double digit touchdown ceiling. And then last in the spot, I'm putting my guy, my guy that I'm banging the table for. This is going to be higher than you're going to see on a lot of other lists, but he's a guy that uh, you know I feel really good about. So I'm gonna state my claim here, and put him in his range. But if you're drafting, just be cognizant of ADP. Doesn't mean you have to quite draft him in the range of everybody else in this tier, because these guys ADPs are going to be much higher. But find that balance, and maybe you jump up, maybe you take him, you know, a round or two earlier than he's normally going, just to make sure you lock him in. I was attempting to do that in a league that I run, and my co-host Michael Crawford sniped me, and I'm still kind of tight about that. So, make sure get your guys. I got a little bit cute with it, because he's a guy that I didn't think people would be looking at, and he got me. So make sure you get your guys, even if you have to leap up, by a round or so. You feel really good about your guys. Get your guys, especially in a situation like this. If you're waiting at tight end, you need to prioritize getting these guys. And honestly wouldn't even knock anybody for getting two guys in these range. If you so chose, if you're unable to get one of these, you know, top tier guys. So that's it of that tier for me. That rest of the tight end ones. So we're gonna move on to tier five, and tier five I'm gonna name high end tight end twos. And these are guys that if things break right, they could give you tight end one value, but I think you should be valuing them as high end tight end twos to kind of start the season, and just kind of see how things progress from there. So let's get into some of these guys. One of the guys in his range for me is Mike Gosicki. He is a very conflicting player for me, in this process. You know, I know people are probably higher on him. They probably have him in a higher range than I have him. But to me, there's just a lot of caution signs here. He's heading into a contract year. The Dolphins drafted Hunter Long in the draft, and they have a penchant for using multiple tight ends. And then a spot that Gasicki operated from last year, in the slot mostly. He wasn't an inline guy, operated from the slot. They drafted Jalen Waddle in the first round this year, who projects to be an every down slot receiver. So, you know, a lot of red flags there. That really kind of caused me to be kind of sour on Gasicki from a dynasty standpoint, for sure. and it kind of carried over into redraft for me. But at the same time, man, the dude is so athletic that um, his splash plays can rival near anybody at the position. Well, really anybody at the position. This is a guy that can jump out of the stadium, um, can run away from people. Um, for me, he's the ultimate, like, kind of like lottery ticket. And so I wouldn't knock anybody for, taking a shot on him, especially if you're not doing it too high. Like if it's more in this range and maybe not, in that tight end, um, in the tier before this. If it's in this range or you want to take that shot, I can't knock you. And really in this range, you should be more taking swings for the fence. But he's just not a guy that me personally I'm going to be prioritizing. So another guy in this range, Dallas Goddard. Man, like I wish the Eagles would have traded Zach Ertz to the Bills. I mean, that would have been so great for us because um, if that would have happened, I would have pushed Goddard to the very top of tier 4. And with Zach Ertz, I mean, he's kind of on that Jason Witten spectrum now after the catch. But if you put him on the Bills, um, I mean, the Bills just pretty much have decided they're never going to run the ball again. So I would have probably put Zach Ertz somewhere in this tier. Based off of that, like he's kind of declined, but off of volume alone, in an offense like Buffalo and his ability to, he's a sure-handed guy. So between that volume and the offensive environment there, and his ability to possibly score some touchdowns, I would have put him in this tier. So Goddard again, super talented player, but as long as Zach Ertz is there, it's just difficult to put him any higher than this. So no, a guy to look at. He's not a guy I'm gonna be prioritizing either, just because um, you know, if I'm gonna be prioritizing people in this tier or just anything as far as a draft goes, I'm looking at upside. Because I would much rather just stream the position and play the waiver wire and try to do some things there if I'm not taking a guy that I feel really good about their upside and the ability to break into that top 5 or 6. If you're drafting tight ends, in the single digit rounds, or even the high double digit rounds, you need to be able to see a pathway to them being a top 6 guy at the position, in my opinion. So that would be what I'm looking at. Later in the draft, if you don't feel as good about your position, or you want to back up, if you want to go that route, by all means take a floor guy. But in the range that a Dallas Goddard is going in drafts, I think that you should be aiming for a guy that, like I said, if things break right, can get into that top 5, top 6 range. And I have a hard time seeing Dallas Goddard, reaching that point this year with Zach Ertz looking like he's going to be there the entire year with him. So that's my thoughts on Goddard. Another guy in this range, Evan Ingram. Ingram, his outlook looked a lot better to me about a week or so ago. Kenny Galladay wasn't practicing. Slayton was banged up. Kyle Rudolph, who hasn't practiced in a while, wasn't practicing. But now Ingram pops up with a calf issue. Galladay seems to be trending in the right direction. Rudolph just started practicing again. So just things don't look quite as good as it looked. Like Ingram was a guy that I was going to come into this kind of banging the table on as a sleeper, and now I can't feel as confident in that now. With so much target kind of competition there, you want to see a clear runway, and now it doesn't look like we're going to get that with Ingram. So he's another guy that, like Gosicki, he's in a walk year. And I mean, it'd be super intriguing, if he's a guy that ends up getting traded. Um, if the Giants decide that they're not going to resign him, and maybe another team, has an injury or decides they want to level up and add another weapon. If he gets into a situation where he's being used more um, towards his strengths as a player, being split out more and being able to create matchups. If he's going to be used like that, he's a guy that has top five upside at the position. And so, depending on where you draft it, where he's going, if he's going, late, he's the guy I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on as a tight end too, and just kind of waiting it out and seeing how things progress. Like I said, if he were to get traded, man, he vaults right up if he goes into the right situation. He's top six guy if he gets into the right hands. So might be something to think about there. If you have a deeper league and you can keep a second tight end, that'd be something I would be interested in doing. I have him in a maybe one or two dynasty leagues. I think maybe one, but he's a guy that I have some other guys at the position that in that league, so he's not somebody I'm really going to be playing much this year. I don't think, but definitely a hold to see where he lands because his situation could look a lot better in a trade or a year from now. If he leaves in free agency, so something to keep in mind there. Cole Kmet, another guy that's in his range. Late last year, he took over as a primary tight end and showed some promise in that offense. Bears didn't add any target competition whatsoever. And then if you look at the quarterback position, I think he's getting a mild upgrade to start with in the short term with Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton will, kind of more target the short to intermediate areas of the field. And that's where Cole Kmet is going to occupy, and Andy Dalton is just going to be a more kind of consistently accurate player than a guy like Trubisky. So like I said, you get that mild QB upgrade to start with, and then at some point, um, I think the Bears brass will come to their senses and throw Justin Fields out there. And then once Justin Fields gets out there, now you're talking about, a potentially massive upgrade to the quarterback position, and then more of a threat to go down the field, down the seam, to give him some chances to win at the catch point. Um, Justin Fields being able to extend plays and maybe find Cole Kmet down the field for some big plays, would be huge. So a guy that I would be um, prioritizing as a tight end too, because again he has an upward trajectory and you can kind of see that upside. You can tell that story with him. And then another guy in this range for me is Jonnu Smith. I know I got Hunter Henry as my guy, but I think there's room for Jonnu to produce too. And many of the same arguments I made for Hunter Henry, you can make the same arguments for Jonnu Smith. The difference would be, Hunter Henry is a guy that is going to play in line, probably going to be on the field more than Jonnu. So I like those aspects of things for Hunter Henry, and that's what will put Hunter Henry above Johnu for me. But Johnu is going to get some scheme touch opportunities that Henry won't. And we've seen this coaching staff support two tight ends in fantasy before. We know with Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. So not going to rule out that both of these guys can be productive. There'll be times where they're kind of taking off of each other's plate, but I do think that there will be times that both of them can kind of eat at the same time. So um, you know that's something to keep in mind. So I think that Johnu should be kind of a priority tight end too as well. So let's go ahead and kind of plug these guys in. I'm gonna go Dallas Goddard first. Like I said, I don't feel great. about his overall upside, and I may be even tempted to put some other guys in his range over him. But for right now, I'm gonna rock with him there. Um, I had Evan Ingram here, but the injury thing to start with kind of scares me a little bit. So I'm gonna go Mike Gesicki here. Again, I'm not crazy about Gosicki's situation. Like I think there's some red flags there for sure. But again, he has the ceiling. If they plan on prioritizing him, he his athletic traits are up there with anybody's at the position. And so, like I said, if you're gonna take a swing on one of these guys, take a swing on athleticism. Take a swing on peaks. Mike Gesicki is a guy that I wouldn't knock anybody for taking a swing on. Uh, Evan Ingram, I'm going to place here. You know what? Actually, I'm not. I'm going to let me undo this. I'm going to put Cole Komet above him. Yeah, I'm going to put Cole Komet above him. Just a more projectable ceiling, just based off of the lack of target competition there. Cole Komet could be second on this team in targets, maybe at worst third. Darnell Mooney is there. Could see a breakout for him. And so, it's possible that he would be second in targets behind Allen Robinson. But I think Cole Komet at worst is probably the third guy on that totem pole. Everett Ingram, he has to contend with Kenny Galladay and um, Sterling Shepard. Also, Darius Slayton is a guy I like a lot. And then they just drafted Kadarius Toney in the first round. At some point, he could break into a role. So um, more to kind of contend with there. And then last, I'm going to put Donu Smith to close out that tier. Yeah. So, those are high end tight end twos. Ideally, if you're waiting at tight end, you should be getting somebody in this range, somebody in this group. And actually multiple people from this group, honestly. If you're not going to get one of those top guys, I think you should um, take two shots at it, and you should be taking two shots from this range. Like I said before, I wouldn't knock anybody for taking two shots from this tier four, but definitely if you're waiting on tight end, I think you should be taking two guys somewhere in this range. I got myself in trouble in a draft, in that same draft that my co-host Michael Crawford sniped me with Hunter Henry. It got a little bit too cute, waited a little bit too long, and kind of um, thought I could just bank on this one guy, and there was a couple other guys that I liked, but their situations kind of changed, and so I ended up getting stuck where I took these two guys, and then their situation kind of doesn't look as good. New Orleans with Adam Troutman, he went down with an injury early. There's questions about exactly how he'll be used, and then Ferkser with the Titans. Liked him coming in, but it seems like he may not get the bump in snaps that we think. So now you kind of need him to be more efficient and need him to be, um, you know, super targeted in uh, the range of snaps that he, is kind of projected to be in, and not taking a jump that I kind of expected from a snap share standpoint. So I'm gonna close out the tiers here. I think you guys kind of get the gist of my thoughts of the position. So I kind of cut it here, but I'm gonna give you a few other guys that I'm kind of looking at and prioritizing later. Gerald Everett is kind of a bet on athleticism play. He got 6 million from the Seahawks for this season. Uh, should lock him into some kind of role. Um, I think they paid who was it? The Panthers, former Panthers tight end, Greg Olson, somewhere in that range previously. So that kind of payment puts him like in the middle of pay range as far as tight ends. Should solidify a role. They like to use multiple tight ends, but he's a guy that they could be with that payment could have prioritized, so they may be looking at a role for him. Um, his OC, Shane Waldron was a QB coach there, but he's now the OC in Seattle. But he was there in LA with him, so he knows his strengths and weaknesses, and that could be a good match. So a guy that could be ADP. Dan Arnold is a guy I talked about, I believe, on the last episode of the pod with the guys, as a guy to just kind of monitor. Maybe you're not drafting him, but again, that priority undrafted free agent type has the size and athleticism to carve out a red zone role. And his old OC in New Orleans is here in Carolina with him now. Always like to connect those dots, when decisions like that get made. So another guy to look at. Donald Parham, 6'8", talented guy who's playing with a young stud quarterback, and his main competition is a 34-year-old on a 1-year deal. So something to keep an eye on that waiver wire. Uh, Tyler Conklin, I've talked about him a few times if you follow me on Twitter. Just a solid guy, good enough athlete. Nice strong hands, a guy I like a lot. Um, with the Irv Smith injury, it's not like Tyler Conklin's role is going to change. He's going to be in that inline role. He's really replacing Kyle Rudolph, not Irv Smith. But with the lack of target competition there in Minnesota, that's a very narrow tree they have there with Thielen and Justin Jefferson, and obviously Dalvin Cook out of the backfield. Wouldn't surprise me at all if Tyler Conklin is able to kind of carve out a role where he's getting 5 targets a game, 6 targets a game with some red zone usage. So keep an eye on him late in drafts. Javon Johnson with the Saints, converted wide receiver. Um, and he's kind of gumming up the works for Adam Troutman, because looks like the team is trying to push him as that split out tight end that's playing that seam role that they've used before with way back Jimmy Graham, and then more recently Jared Cook. So looking at him, he looks like a guy that's going to be able to win, matchups against sub package players. And I've talked, previous times before about Sean Payton's ability to scheme guys in that position down the seam for big plays. So a guy to definitely keep an eye out on. On the waiver wire, or maybe even drafting him in the last round. I would have no issues with that, because we want ADP beaters, and he's a guy that if he's getting prioritized as that guy, he can definitely beat ADP. And the minute he starts balling out week 1, people are going to snatch him on the waiver wire. So definitely keep an eye on him. And if you're in a draft and you get to the last round and you're not in love with a lot of the guys, and you need another tight end, take them. Take them and see what week 1 shows. If it's not looking plentiful for them, then cut them and move on to the next guy. But definitely somebody that you should be prioritizing. So Um, so that's it, man. That's my complete view of the tight end position for 2021. Be on the lookout for some more fantasy content coming real soon, as well as me and Mike and Chris getting geared up for a great season with Deep Cover Pod. Also, check out Two Guys Watching Football with Mike and Cole Jackson. And also check out The Fire Zone with Mike and, Denard Melton. A lot of great things coming in store for this channel and this feed, man. Two Guys Watching Football platform. We're coming. We're bringing fire content for the people. So definitely like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you.